After a refreshing coffee break, I would request all ladies and gentlemen to please take their seats. And is there someone with the mic around? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here opening the theme of the conference, Evolution of Learning Environments. So, anyone who wants to take the floor right now and wants to share one solution of how to evolve with this learning environment or the current situation in which we are. Yeah. Please, you can come up as well. Most welcome. Please come. Yeah, come.
Hi everybody, this is Aarti, co-founder for Clap Global. I really think that a lot of our performance metrics and things in the education system is stemming from this fear of trying to make our children employable, which is great. But what if we had one campaign where all the top CEOs and the top companies of the world ran a campaign to say that, okay, we do not employ by just seeing your academic grades. We don't employ by that. We employ by everything else, all the other multifaceted things that you have. How good are you as a team worker? If I could get 1,000 best CEOs of the world to run a campaign to say, we employ by seeing this, and we can run that down, and we have a campaign second by all the top universities of the world saying that we do not recruit by academic scores, we recruit by how you are as humans. I think that will filter down to how is assessment done, how are the test exams done, what is the curriculum. It will filter down to the parent expectation. If I could do this, I would run this campaign globally of 1,000 CEOs and 1,000 university heads to run what are they looking for when they want people to join them. And I think that will change the way expectations from parents and teachers and children. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else who wants to add something to what ma'am said or wants to say something new? Yeah, there are. Is there a mic? Yeah.
I think we need to get children to understand from a very young age what is the definition of things like happiness and success. Okay, I have reams and reams of research to show that you might be incredibly talented and you might be incredibly hardworking and you can still fail. Right? I have reams of research to show that. Anybody has any doubt on that, just give me a call or talk to me in the break. Okay, so you got to give the message to people that, so what is happiness? Then when should you be happy? Or when should you feel you're successful? You should feel you're happy or you're successful when you worked your butt out and you've used the process that you feel is the best process. Okay, there are plenty of processes available. You look at those processes and you implement them. So how does one memorize stuff? How does one think? How does one apply for a job? How does one conduct a business? You have certain processes which are known to succeed, where the probability of success is large, but there's no guarantee. So a person should feel happy if he's applied the right process and he's worked really hard at it, even though that may not lead to success. And a person should not be happy because he's successful by fluke. Because then that makes him feel that, oh, I stood first in class this time without studying, great. I'm a genius, I don't need to work hard in life. So the results are not that critical, but process and hard work are much more critical.
Right, thank you. Ma'am, there's a lady in the green. Before ma'am says just one thing, I think let's keep this session somewhere between Barkha Dutt's show and Arnab Goswami's show. So I would say please feel free to interrupt, question, add. Let it be like a family of educators just discussing things out. Ma'am, please.
So I think that what we really need to look into very strongly is the pedagogy. And I think that's the key for change, along with technology. People talk about technology but forget the pedagogy. And I also want Mr. Matthew from magic bus. He literally has the best premises where experiential learning and inquiry-based learning. And I'm wondering why he didn't show those slides where children really experience some of the best learnings. That he's got a huge place where kids go. So I think, Matthew, you should share a little bit on those experiential learning environment that you have at your campus, which I was waiting to hear in your speech, which you missed out. You did talk about your story, but it'll be really nice. I must say that for our school students love the Magic Bus, because the real learning, like we are talking about out of the classroom learning, is where, Matthew, you can throw light on.
Thank you very much for saying that. But yeah, I didn't talk about it actually because I wasn't sure what I should talk about. But we have this incredible campus, which is about an hour out of Bombay, between Bombay and Pune. And the idea, when we built Magic Bus, started Magic Bus, we wanted to create an environment where children from the slums could come in a really world-class environment. It's 20 acres. We invested a lot in low ropes, high ropes. We've got a water sports center, mountain bike center. It accommodates about 200 people. We have 60 outdoor educators who work and live there. And actually what it's become now is a place, this interface where children from schools such as your own come for CAS or come just for learning programs at this residential center. And the beauty of it is we can do the traditional, let's take you out to a village and you can build solar panels, or you can take your children and build water trenches or whatever that might be, as well as stay in the villages. But we also bring children in from Magic Bus and from the surrounding environments into that campus. So we put your children on a climbing wall or in a kayak with the Magic Bus children. And there's such an incredible learning environment because it helps your children, sorry, I don't mean to be us and them, but it helps children from your schools really understand in a very respectful, dignified manner some of the issues that these young people face and equip them with some of the challenges that they will face as they graduate. We have done one thing, we've left the next generation with possibly some of the worst challenges in the world, in terms of poverty and water and environment. And our view is that we need to do that in a way that is dignified and respectful and in a very good environment. So if anyone is interested, sorry, I'm not pitching this, thank you very much, but if anyone's interested in your schools, it's called the magicbuscenter.org. It is, as I said, you'll look at it and think, I can't believe an NGO runs this or works in this. It is truly world class. And of course, we'd love to have you there. Thank you very much, Amanda, for that.
Thank you. The gentleman, yes, sir, please.
So, I had a question both for Matthew and for, is Geeta ma'am still here?
Ravi, is Geeta ma'am here or has she left?
Oh, okay. But it's just about context actually, because in the pedagogy, what's really interesting is we've got this, it is an us and them situation at this point in time, if you look at this, so we should just call it that. If you're looking at the examples we're learning from, they're all from organizations so far, and I'm assuming Hole in the Wall would also be similar, of organizations that are working with underprivileged, with the other half, right? So over there, it's, they just don't want to be poor, one learning opportunity, the other key thing that I took away from that. But how does that work when in our spaces is something I'm very curious to hear thoughts on, especially with respect to the fact that these kids are also having behavior modeled by their parents. And if we're talking about creating a more empathic generation, if we're talking about creating a more socially aware generation from the privileged, then what is the role that their parents play in all of that? And I don't know, do you guys interact with the parents of the kids whose lives you affect, and in terms of that? And I wanted to hear those perspectives maybe, and even from everybody.
So do you want to take the question or shall I answer?
Yeah, the question was to you.
So we won't do a Magic Bus program unless we're dealing with the parents. So the whole idea is you get the parents, the youth and the children engaged in solving the problem. We're dealing with child marriage and issues like that where there's so much trust you need to build across the whole fabric of that society and community. But the more interesting question, and this is, I guess, concerning everyone here is, how do you start doing this? How do you start interacting in a more meaningful way? You know, we've looked at, I work in charity, and I look at a website and I see a starving child with a fly on her lip, and there's a 500 rupee give every month, otherwise she's going to, you know, slip off the cliff. And I think that, especially with this Generation Z, with millennial generation, people are less inclined, young people are less inclined to get involved financially. They want to have some skin in the game. They want to understand, what can I do as a young person, or even as a parent, to get my young person engaged and involved. So actually what we're doing is building out a platform actually in India where we are enabling people to go and volunteer. We're enabling people to, I don't know if any of you saw the Global Citizens Festival with Coldplay last year, where you gain points for doing something good, and then you go and get to see Coldplay. So it's a similar concept to that, where we're saying with children, young people in India today, it's not just about giving money. We have to give you some mechanism to own the problem and go and play football with that child, or go and do some mentoring for a young person. I mean, that I think is the critical gap we have at the moment. So I think you're absolutely right to identify that, and hopefully in the next 3 months we'll be launching something which is all about, and not just for Magic Bus, this is about other charities as well. How do I have a more meaningful relationship with the them?
There are a few hands. Anybody could pass the mic, please? Oh, yeah, sorry.
I'm not going to speak about technology because I get passionate about that, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later on. I think there's two, I think it was Aarti Chhabria talk about elephants in the room. There's two that are not in the room. One is parents, and I'll let somebody else speak about that. But I think the one that's not in the room that we need to bring into the room is the universities. Now, in December, for the first time in over 40 years in education, mostly in international education, I was invited to a Pearl Academy, and for the first time ever, a university said, "What do you want us to deliver?" I have never, ever had that conversation before. Until we realize that we are trapped into a system providing people for a model which is more than 100 years old, we're not going to move forward the way we want to move forward. So addressing the universities and getting them to change that old industrial revolution model, which India has copied from the Brits, it's all that's still there, we're not going to make the progress that we want to. So I think that's the next big challenge.
I think I'll come to your point first because it caters to parents also. There's one conviction that we really believe in and we try to pass that to all our parents is, these days we have this term of like cool parenting. Parents want to be friend, they want to be teacher, they want to be everything. There's one thing time and again we are telling parents that your child will get many teachers, your child will get many friends. The only thing that your child will not get is parents. So if we can actually tell parents to be parents and do their role or perform their role diligently, I think all the news that we are hearing from last 6 months wherein there are no values left, I think we will overcome that. That is one thing we are trying to inculcate. Second, one question I have from this gathering is, like, we talk about so much about technology. All the schools are technologically driven. I think all the classrooms are smart classrooms. But where do our teachers stand? Do they understand the generational disparity? How many of the teachers they know about that they are teaching generational Z, who is much more empowered than them? They have all the information. I think each and every child has everything when it comes to information. Is the teacher able to transfer that information to knowledge and then to the wisdom? Are we really empowered for that? That's a question which I really am seeking the answer for.
Trying to answer what you have asked is that teachers should be facilitators. Teachers cannot be experts in everything. So to be a facilitator, what we do in our schools is our children sometimes lead the project. So rather than the teacher feeling I'm less skilled, it's the children who are driving. So that truly becomes a student-centered learning environment. Regarding parenting, what you asked, I have seen a lot of helicopter parents, and especially in metros. They are hovering around their child and it's like, oh God, just leave these kids to us and we'll do something meaningful with them. So we are doing a lot of parenting workshops, training parents rather than children and teachers. Because as he raised and as you raised, this helicopter parenting is, I'll do everything for my child. It's the competition, it's the race. We need to move them away from that race.
And I think you have a very valid point. We need to have a very close affiliation with parents, because the research also shows that 70% impact on a child's growth is actually from what he or she is learning from home. So parental involvement is a lot, and a lot of the schools somehow lack in communicating with parents regularly. I think that is one thing which we need to look at. Anybody else, any other thoughts?
I just have something that we do at our school is to have coffee mornings with parents. And I think that the challenge is that how do you get that connect with the parents? And I think today we need to look as parents as partners in education and not an audience. And until and unless you don't involve them, you don't engage them, you don't have a dialogue with them. So these three things I think is the best thing to do, is to involve them, engage with them, and have a dialogue with them. I mean, invite them for a coffee, get to listen to them, and get to understand what their expectations are. Because if you go to see, the goal of a parent and the goal of the school is the same. They want their children to be successful, and I think the goal of the school is also the same, that you want the kids of the school to be successful. So that's regarding parents. And regarding teachers, and I think where teachers are concerned, we are a paperless school completely, where we use technology. We don't have any textbooks. And I went through the same that you may be going through. So I think the first step is to let the teachers explore, let the teachers give them time, pilot it. What we did was pilot with one class and start training the teachers, creating that awareness for the teachers, or else it is very, very difficult to have an iPad in a class. All 2,000 students bring only iPads to school. I mean, that's the school we are. So you can imagine the kind of issues that we must have had. I'm talking about 10 years back. So we are now in the process of doing on-screen exams, online exams, and today if you read in the Times of India, it's very much there. Cambridge is going for on-screen exam in the primary and secondary. IB is going on-screen exam. So you see where technology is heading to, and with artificial intelligence coming in, machine learning, we already scared, you know. When I open my email box every morning nowadays, I feel someone is reading my emails, because there are 3 options given down. If you all see, the latest is you have 3, you know, and they say that jobs are going to get lost. It's true, because previously when I used to travel from my home to school, I used to write down the replies of all the emails that I had, and I have to go back and give it to my secretary. She has no job now, because I've got 3 options and I just click those 3 options, and I don't know, she keeps asking me what's balance, because there's nothing. So someone is reading our mails, and with AI coming in, I think you need to really, I attended a session in IB now about artificial intelligence, and I think that's the question that many of us in this room don't know what's going to happen. We don't even know the jobs that are going to exist, and what are we preparing these kids for. So I think your homework is to help us to see what's going to be the future of school education, what skills. I know we talk about skills. I don't know, we say 21st century, I think they got old. We've all been talking about them. But finally, what's the future going to bring for us? They're saying 20 years hence, there'll be jobs that we cannot even dream of. So I don't know what kind of education we are giving to get there. We've already started somewhere, but I think that's a big question. You need to get somebody down to speak on artificial intelligence and machine learning. So that's my last bit for everybody to start thinking
And
Thank
with
you.
that combination, just 1 minute. With this combination, with the AI increasing, where are the relationships heading? That's also another very important parameter, I feel. The technology is taking over, but then was education all about technology, learning, knowledge, or it was more about understanding, relationships, being human? So someone mentioned here, down the line we see a lot of news coming every now and then in the paper, suicides happening, children are hitting back their educators.
and principals are kind of afraid of getting into the schools if there is something happened and the media taken over. So where is the education handing? Where is the balance of so-called AI and the real education? So that's also one important thing if we look at the future. I mean, I don't think so future is only technology. No, Much
future is
more
not
than that.
technology, but they're going to be cars without drivers. They're already manufacturing. So
Yeah.
that's scary. I mean, we cannot imagine a car without driver. But however, with AI, admissions in universities are done by machines. So data, there's a lot of data that is being used by machines that can create this kind of understanding. So it's scary in the future what's going to happen. I mean,
True.
questions.
Because I think
True.
3 days back only there was this news that by 2030 robots will take over the schools. So if robots take over the school and they start teaching, because so much we hear about AI every day. So where do we stand? Students also and teachers also.
I think at one level I'm very happy being a geographer that paperless is a way forward. But is paperless the right thing, or lack of wastage of paper is the right thing? Because completely moving to technology, is it going to help or not help? I remember when I was a kid, we were encouraged to write letters. And you ask kids to write these days, their writing skills are all over the place. Even the emailing, there are certain words which are coming which are more of WhatsApp language rather than, the empathy, care or grace or respect. Those things are missing. And coming on artificial intelligence, I'm not a man of technology, to be honest. When I get my mobile phone, I didn't even know how to use it. There was a time when I was even very scared of using credit card and ATM card. But that's the reality. The technology is becoming important part of our life. But I heard Satya Nadella's one of the interview where he was talking about artificial intelligence. And here is this man who is heading Microsoft, and he said that artificial intelligence can never, ever replace a teacher. Artificial intelligence can never, ever replace the emotional intelligence. He said that artificial intelligence is going to only support what we are doing. And he, as of today, does not see robots replacing teachers in the classrooms. I think to balance it here, maybe if we move to the left, because, yeah, sir, please.
I have a suggestion rather than a comment. We'll be discussing a lot today, and we'll be touching on a lot of topics. I was just thinking if we can have protocols around sharing, because we don't want to be talking about everything under the sun and then leaving this conference, not really getting to the meat of it. So have the organizers, or have you thought about some burning issues that are
Our main focus is very well highlighted from the beginning, which is on assessment, curriculum and pedagogy. That's what the main focus is when Professor Mitra comes in, how to implement, because all three are integrated. Unfortunately, in our kind of education system, we look at the curriculum first, delivery second, and the assessment last. In the end of the year, we think, okay, what all we have covered, how we go about it. Rather, it should be the backward design. It should be completely opposite. Our end should be first, and then we should come towards the curriculum we are going to deliver later. And pedagogy should be somewhere in the middle. So these are the three components we'll be focusing on over the day. And I think these discussions are also revolving around that. Because these you can't restrict into one or two things. They're all integrated. Whether it is emotional intelligence or artificial intelligence or technology or computers. So I hope I'm able to answer your question.
Sir, Mr. Bali, the most important thing is, let us realize that this is the scenario. 2018, we are supposed to understand that we have to teach the children who are going to retire in about, say, 30 years of their service. For example, a child takes an admission in class 1 this year, 2018-19. 12 years now for completing his schooling is 12 years, then after graduation, PGs, whatever it is, another 20 years is going to learn. From there, another 30 years. Therefore, this is the scenario as of today. We have to believe in technology. We can't say that we will revert to rote writing and things like that. We have to accept the fact we have believed in this teaching method. We want to be teachers forever. Therefore, we have to plan out a curriculum or whatever it is to see that we give a hand-holding to the teachers if we believe in our principalship. Otherwise, I don't think we are fit to be principals if we don't believe in progressing. Yes, values, principles and integrity definitely will exist. Nothing will happen to the relationship. But we are not very, very emotional. That's the difference between earlier relationships and now. That's what I think. Now, many of us don't know the thin line between a value, a principle and an integrity. So these things will be learned at a future date. Nothing will go wrong, but we have to embrace the change. We have to believe in artificial intelligence. Only if we read, we can lead. This is how the future is going to be. This is what I guess, whether you agree or not, this is the scenario for future.
So I have a question to all the educators here. We talk a lot about how the future ought to change towards 21st century readiness and all the various mandates that ought to be focused towards. But I want to ask you from your personal experiences, because I don't have that input, how much of all of this, which is something that is forward thinking, possible when you, I would assume, and I'd like to be clarified if it's otherwise, when you have curriculums and boards and various things to kind of adhere to, say there's a CBSE mandate you have an IB mandate, you have a ICSE mandate, various other things that ultimately every school is looking to adhere towards. Now, within that context, I would like to understand from everybody here, how do you achieve this while keeping that eye? Is it possible to achieve these various forward-thinking ideas, or how does an educator or a principal here go about it? Is what I wanted to understand from you, because I'm a provider of such a solution. Now, I hear various things. I'm told you're a nice to have, you're not a need to have. Now, I'm trying to find out from you people, from the principals, from the educators here, how do you really marry this expectation of a very, very solid thing towards all these things that ought to be put towards? So I just like inputs, thoughts, and views on that from everybody, because that could really make my life a lot more simpler in terms of how I articulate and deliver an experience which meets a lot of expectations and sticks to a syllabus of.
I think sir wants to respond.
I think I'd rather raise a fundamental question. Ultimately, what is education for? What are we educating? What is this final output that you're talking of? You talked of assessment. Is it assessment in terms of learnings against a curriculum? That is whatever CBSE or anything was set. And is the learning this thing all right? Then we talk about processes, technologies which will help us reach better. Or are we talking of developing a more human being, a better human being, a better person who is a good citizen and who can sort of lead this country, whoever this generation that's going to do, lead this country in this global world into a more sustainable sort of society. If that is the end, this thing, then involving these people in the issues that are of today, getting them much more involved in whatever is happening and getting solutions from children as they are working. And I think this is something that we have done in the Katha school, where the children are working on day-to-day problems, but they are also learning at the same time through a curriculum. So the learning process is different. They learn through story, they learn through actual working on community issues which is facing them. They discuss issues which are taking place in parliament or whatever it is, and as they relate to them and how they can change society. And through this process, they also connect to whatever is in maths or science or as per the curriculum or learning outcomes. So it's possible for us, if you deal with regular issues and bring them into a normal day-to-day world and not isolate them, that we can teach them to a curriculum which a CBSE board might want. But our final objective in this education process is not that they learn or clear that exam at the end of this thing, but create this human being that we want, a better human being and a better citizen for this country.
Just one point to add is, and the assessment doesn't need to be only the assessment of the curriculum. The assessment can be on the emotional connect as well, right? It can be, so what can be done from curriculum perspective to make those changes so that there is an assessment of some of those relationship or the emotional connect that happens. And I think if that shift comes in from a base core on the curriculum itself, then probably it doesn't need a policy to actually do that. as educators and parents here, probably we can do that. And their role relies not only with the teachers in the school where they spend a lot of time, but where can be the connect between the teachers and the parents as well to make sure that there is no conflict. A lot of times we see what a child sees in school and his environment where he spends 7-8 hours of the day or communicating, collaborating with his fellow colleagues versus what is there in the, at home. A lot of time there are conflicts, right? So if that comes in and gets a little more assessment happening towards that part as well. And I loved what Matthew said, right? Is what are we doing to actually enable that to happen? So my 2 cents as a parent, I have a son who's studying in US. My daughter is at 12, hopefully going to US in this year. But I see that shift that's happening, right? Technology is helping. It's not that it's not happening. So my request is if that can be added as part of the curriculum or other parts.
Thank you.
And I also like to add another point that my friend over here asked here that we have, we are talking about AI, we are talking about machine learning, and we are talking about concepts, but we are still rooted in an education system which is mandated by boards and which Michael rightly said is based on industrial era framework. So I would like to start answering it by giving example of something simple, being from a technology company. All of us are using QWERT keyboards, right? In computers, in our handsets. Ever wondered why? Now, QWERT keywords were invented 150 years ago when typewriters were there and they were slow. So they had distributed the words across with, a majority of the words like A, E, D, which are used frequently on the left side, so that the typewriters could not get jammed. But it got adopted across board and it later came down to computers, to mobiles, and it became a legacy issue. And I similarly feel that there are a lot of legacy fallouts on our education system as well, where we have standardized education, which is again an industrial era thing which came in. We have periods which are of defined time. So there are a lot of problems like that, and being a technology from a technology company, the way we look at it is how do we solve the problem of QWERT keyboards? They were inefficient. It was through, when we talk about AI, it was through predictive texting. When you start typing, it automatically throws up the suggestions and you type faster. So at Extra Mass, we were trying to work out how can a standardized product become personalized in the classroom? How can learning be, collaborative? So that we can, when we talk about evolving of learning environments, that was our aspiration. So we got into a total learning solution through which, everybody could have their own space and teachers could have personalized homework going to them, personalized assignments, personalized learning environments. At the same time also, we talk about big data, we talk about AI. So you have a lot of data coming out of students in terms of each assessment, each class, which could be analyzed and thrown back to the teachers, to the parents, and how they can be efficiently utilized. So that's the step we are taking towards that direction, and would love to hear what brilliant things are happening across board.
Thank you. The gentleman at the back.
Yeah, across whichever forums of principals or educators you go nowadays, everybody talks about the fear, the scariness of artificial intelligence and all those things that are coming, and we are scared that the paperless world. But if you look at it properly, this is the best time for teachers and educators to be visionaries and most importantly to be brave. Let me take it at 2 steps forward. We are talking of paperless and all those. Do we realize that already at the age of 35, 30, people across the world are not writing any longer? Whether it is a doctor, it is a bank, everywhere writing as a skill has stopped. So what we foresee is in the next 15, 20 years, today, though across boards, children of the age to 4 to 7 spend most of the time, schools and everybody teaching them to write A, B, C or words and all. We are coming to a time where curriculums will stop teaching writing skills because of the technology that comes. Yes, it is alarming. People stand up and say, where are we going to? But then when we go back 2,000 or 3,000 years back, there was a generation that used to sculpt on rocks and to communicate. Then suddenly a generation came that could write on leaves. The earlier generation said the leaves would burn away, they will not last, and they are lazy. But from there we have moved to Xerox, printing to digital. So the fact is, no matter what, the change is inevitable. Only choice left to us is whether we want to lead the change or we want to be swept away by the change. When we are worried and scared, we will only be swept. But if you want to lead the change, then as visionaries, we can look forward to all these things and how do we integrate. And one thing is very clear, no matter what the skills children will learn, the biggest challenge to schooling and to the world at large is to how to retain the humanness in our children in the future. Because I believe with all this WhatsApp groups and all the what problems of suicide, it will only multiply over a period of time. The biggest leaders or the successful people in this world are people who are going to be able to talk to people, who are psychological. So it may be in form of Babas, it could be philosophical leaders, or the next biggest profession is going to be psychologists. So this is where we have to be brave and lead the change. That is what I believe.
So can I take off from
yeah, ma'am,
here?
please.
Because like very nicely of you asked a psychologist. Yeah. So if I may say something, I've been listening to, assessment, curriculum, pedagogy. And we've been talking about empathy and the need to bring humanness into the classrooms. And then of course we also, started off by seeing the us and the them, the marginalized and us, okay? My perspective and my experiences tell me that there are marginalized children in every classroom. And what are we going to do about them? This is kind of my, something that I go on and on about wherever I speak, and I would still keep on speaking about it, that with all the pedagogy that you might have in curriculum, etc., statistics tell us that 1 out of 6 children are going to face some or the other learning difficulty, including you, me, and everyone here. You have suicides happening. That's absolutely the last straw the individual has done. It's just been a suicide 2 days ago, right? Why are we letting them get there? Okay? So with everything that we have in this 21st century and this August gathering of, educators, can we arrive at how we're going to reach out to those 2 and 3 children in every classroom, and therefore 10% of your school population, so that they do not go away, feeling absolutely unsuccessful. You don't have families which are bereaved. What are we doing for that? And I think that needs to be a core element in everything else, because finally we're in education, we're in schools only for the child. So I really think if we can focus on that too, today it really will take us
Thank you,
a long
ma'am.
way.
I think one of the point we can take from Geeta ma'am's presentation is if we include the collaborative way of learning in the classroom, wherein teachers work in the groups on activities together with a mixed group of students from different backgrounds and pick up that each one teach one kind of a philosophy, it will help, because the research again shows that students learn best with their colleagues or in the classroom or their classmates. They work better. Coming on to what Sir mentioned about sadhus, in this age of WhatsApp and Facebook, I was looking at a video a few days back, and there was this lady, she very beautifully was explaining, I'm sure some of you must have seen it, about the percentage of marks and the success. So she said those who score 85% or 90% and above, they are the ones who become managers and very high level, and they manage everything around them. Then there is a second generation, those who score between 60% to 80% are the ones who become CEOs, and they are the ones who manage these managers. And then she went on to say that those who score between 50 to 60% are the ones most likely become civil servants, and they control everybody else. And those who are between 25 to 50% become politicians, and they control everybody else. And she said those who are very weak in academics, they become sadhus and mahatmas and gurus or dons, and they control everybody else around them. Which is funny on one point, but makes a lot of sense in the real world, that success does not come only with marks. Unfortunately, marks are important, but as ma'am rightly said, it is very unfortunate that our generations after generations are being forced to a point where they think of ending their lives. Nothing more stressful than that. So where are we heading? Which way are we going forward? And that's where we need to look at solutions. One of the solutions could be that in the early years of school, we do not have exams. When I say formal examinations, maybe we could have those days as days where they are taught life skills, they are taught soft skills. Those days are dedicated completely in terms of emotional quotient of each child. And there is something which is very popular in the old public schools in India and abroad, is the tutorial systems, where each adult of the school is assigned 8 to 10 kids, and they meet regularly once a week, and that particular adult, could be a teacher or the principal or the vice principal, works as the guardian in the school. And when they meet for an hour in a week, they discuss about the child's emotional growth, psychological growth, what is happening in that child's personal life. Because to be honest, in today's time, how many of the teachers know the student you are teaching in the class, what that child is carrying from home or on the way from home? There are more challenges they are facing in today's time what we were facing, whether it is eve teasing, molestations, drugs, social media, pornography, bullying, you name it and you have it. So I think where ma'am has pointed out, I think we need to think from that point as to where we are going. There's a lady on the first table has a question. Can somebody get a mic here?
Can I pipe in, because I've really been trying to get the question in.
To the ma'am. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, sir, you can speak, please. Go ahead.
Adding to the assessment point,
I have to balance it. Ma'am, sorry.
Adding to the assessment point, the discussion, to my understanding, the whole history of assessment, if you see, formative, summative, either it is across the board. The format has changed in CBSE or IGCSE or ICSE. That's the whole talk about it. When a student comes to 9th standard, again the focus goes on to clearing the examinations, and there is a stress level. The stress level may be less across the board. Probably state board is high, CBSE is medium, and IGC is very less. But can we have a system where stress-free assessment is being done at the board level of 9th and 10th, where students don't get stress level even at the IGCSE curriculum? If you have any thoughts.
My thoughts are not just the question that you asked. I would like to, come back to ma'am there. When she spoke about emotional quotient, what are we doing in our schools to bring out the positivity for the child to look in the future? Here I would like to give you a small example. I've also worked in an IB school earlier, and we had an IB conference in Bangalore where the workshop was on sustainability. And we were asked to bring from our school a few pictures drawn by grade 5 and 6 children about what they feel is their future going to be. And when we had the session, we were asked to put them across the wall, and we were asked to take a gallery walk. Dear dear principals and heads and educators, let me tell you that we had tears in our eyes. We had tears in our eyes because the paintings were so bleak. What children had drawn was something, as if a child had drawn just a footpath with no greenery, nothing, leading to nowhere. This is what we need to really understand as of today. Maybe we are talking about technology, we are talking about everything, but as ma'am said, are we really thinking of emotional quotient at this point of time? And this is where we are talking about suicides and things. The parental help is not there. So are we providing that kind of help and guidance to the parents? So that is what I wanted to share with you. And I think when we go back We should really look into this. Thank you so much.
Can I
Ma'am,
just add?
you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you.
Just one sec, sir.
That was a hard audience to get a word into. But so I have a couple points to make, just because I've been gathering them every time I try to get a word in. Jahan, to answer your question, right, on what do you, the us versus them, and the us part of it, I think there's fundamentally been a breakdown in the value system in our country. And actually, not just our country, but the world. The world has changed so much in the last 10 years that educators are grappling with how to deal with children of this generation, and so are parents. So one of the things that we really focus on in the early years is that rebuilding of those values. Simple things like equality, simple things like waiting our turn. I remember a year and a half ago, I was at a teacher conference. There was a line for coffee. We were all in a line, and 10 teachers cut that line to get coffee. We are the role models to these children. So if we're cutting lines, what do we expect them to learn, right? At the same time, there are parents who will pay hundreds of rupees in fines because their children are late to school in the morning. We're teaching our children that it's okay to be late because money can buy you out of anything, right? And so we have to be incredibly conscious as people in today's changing world in terms of the kind of human beings and kind of role models we're being to children, right? And so that onus falls back on us. When it comes to the whole AI conversation, the World Economic Forum published an amazing report called the Human Growth Capital Report 2017. It clearly lists out the kind of skills children are going to need 20 years from now. If you look at all those skills, they're nothing to do with the classroom, I'm sorry, but it is about values, it's empathy, it's teamwork, it's critical thinking. So I think that at the end of it, when it comes down to that, it's about that conversation and how are we going to bring that value system back, right? That's kind of all I wanted to say.
Thank you. So I think for a long time you wanted to say something, please.
Well, actually, I was wondering about the topic, which is evolution of learning environments. And can we think of the effective learning environments, or do those exist really, which can be tried out in the schools? And how do we measure the effectiveness of the same? Because finally we want that the children should be successful, whether it is academics, whether it is behavior, whether it is whatever they want to do in future. So which kind of learning environment is best suitable for all children? And can we really think of that? Or are there certain elements required to be built in the students so that they are able to adapt to the changes which are happening? Should we focus on that, or should we focus on trying to experiment with different learning environments and then see whether it fits it or not? And that too for all children. Can we really think of it in that way? Because evolution of learning environments can be many. Everyone can try out and experiment in different ways. On what grounds I should pick up one and go ahead and implement in the school? So I was wondering on that.
Thank you so much. I think I'll close the discussions there with that great thought of is that what are we going to do to make sure that evolution of learning environment works on the ground as well. Why I'm breaking here is because some very important session will happen post lunch, and I don't want to cut into even 5 minutes of that session. What this 45 minutes has done is it has, I think, opened up a lot of questions which that great gentleman will have to answer when he comes here post lunch. So before we break for lunch, two very prestigious felicitations which we could not do in the morning in the beginning. The school with maximum number of participations is here. That is the Sacred Heart School, Mumbai. If the person from that school could come on the stage. And we also have Ms. Sonal Ahuja with us from Sri Ram Foundation. She was the first registration for the event. So if I would request her to please come up. Thank you so much for all the great thoughts, and we'll keep discussing that over lunch. It's 12:30, so 1:30 we are back in this hall to meet the legend himself. Thank you so much.